The ravenous beasts were nothing for Cailana and her warband. She continues her travels to Castell, where the Spark Syndicate has given her information on magic and chaos emerging from the small town. A strong scent of ash and sulfur is nearly overwhelming as they reach the outskirts of Castell. Unfortunately for Cailana, she is not the only wizard to know about the happenings here in town. And of course, they are not alone. Hello folks, and welcome to Dice Chatter. We continue Frostgrave Season 2 with another custom battle scenario for Cailana of the Spark Syndicate and her warband. Magic is present in this ruined town, and she is not the only wizard looking for it. Before we get into the game, we will cover the wizards, their spell, the warband they have hired, the scenario, and any other pre-game shenanigans. So without further ado, let's dive in. Cailana of the Spark Syndicate and her apprentice Alan are prepared for this next engagement. The Enchantment School of Magic is her specialty, and she plans to boost up her warband with spells like Strength and Enchant Armor. A hardy lot her warband is becoming. We now have 2 stalwart knights, a ranger, an infantryman, and a number of thieves and thugs to round out the 10-fighter list. The other wizard and apprentice may look a bit familiar to some of you. Budwug Krulroot and his apprentice Oswald are back to kick some ass. They will be focusing on the Sigillus School of Magic, but even more importantly, they want treasure, riches, and power. With the help of their warband, this goal may be realized. The rest of the squad contains a brutish barbarian, a crossbowman, a man-at-arms, and a number of thieves and thugs to round out the list. Moving on over to the scenario today, we have another custom narrative battle. I'd say this one isn't too far off from the Worm Hunt scenario in the 2nd edition rulebook, just a few changes. For the detailed rules, check the description. Set up your game area to reflect the outskirts of a ruined town. Here is everything all set up on the table. Place the central treasure in the dead center of the board. For me, it's this rundown wagon. Then place 4 more treasures in some ruined buildings. To make the game more interesting, place a couple tokens on the top floors. For each warband, set them up according to the basic rules. As I set these models up here, there is one more objective to worry about. This terrifying monstrosity. Name this beast whatever you want, but just know this model is going to be tough to take down. You will emerge on the table after turn 1 and kill everything in its path. Avoid this guy at all costs, but if a warband manages to damage or kill this foul beast, they will be awarded some hefty experience points. With everything set up and no pre-game rolls to be had, let's roll some turn 1 initiative. And by the looks of these 2 strong rolls, Cailana will get the first go. Turn 1 Wizard Phase. Cailana will start things off and attempt to cast Strength on the knight beside her. This spell is successful on a 9, and an 11 will do. This knight is now an even more adversarial foe for the opponent. To speed things up this wizard phase, the rest of the fighters near Cailana, including yourself, will move and make their way up the board closer to the number of treasures. After all of these moves, we jump over to the Budwug's wizard phase. For starters, we'll move a handful of models again. The man-at-arms and crossbowmen will position themselves to get closer to the center of the table, while the barbarian and Budwug have some different plans. They will group activate, moving up the table, and then the wizard will cast Push on the raging barbarian. The spell is more than successful on a 14. You will then attempt to fling the fighter up the table, and with that strong roll, the barbarian flies a massive 13 inches up to the wagon where the central treasure is located. And the barb will then use his second action to take the treasure into Budwug's possession. A strong play by the experienced wizard. The apprentice phase will now begin with Alan, who will move up the table and get just in line of sight of the barbarian holding the treasure and attempt to cast Fool's Gold on the fighter. It's a long shot, but he is willing to risk it all. The spell is successful on a 16, and he gets close with a 14, enough for him to empower the spell and remove the treasure from the burly warrior and move it closer to his warband. After this strong spellcasting showing, the rest of the squad will move and get closer into some better positions, closing in on the treasure near the center of the table. After all these moves, we turn over to Oswald and his nearby figures. Oswald and his gang of thieves and thugs will take their turn making their way up the board. The apprentice doesn't see a spell that would be beneficial at this time, so he figures he may just get in a good position for the next battle round. With all of these moves complete, it is on to the soldier phase. For this phase of the round, we will just combine both the wizard's leftover fighters. Everyone on the table will move and get into strong positions. We know after this phase that the mysterious, monstrous creature will emerge in one of the ruined homes. Which one will it be? Even for the green building, odd for the tan one. And this creature is placed slightly closer to Budwug's Warband, but it has its eyes turned onto most of Cailana's Warband. This will end Battle Round 1. This engagement is gearing up for some absolute chaos. Let's roll some turn 2 initiative, and once again, Cailana is the first to go. The ranger will start turn 2, firing an arrow up at the crossbowman on the ledge, who has some light cover. Due to this, we have a +2 shot into the crossbowman's +3, and the arrow flies by the fighter, dealing no damage. The ranger will then scoot forward and end his turn there. Both the knight and the infantryman will move forward, knowing that the dangerous monster will most likely make their way right towards them. This will then give the final activation to Cailana, who will attempt to cast Furious Quill on the mysterious beast. This spell is successful on a 12, and she lands a 15. For now, this creature has -1 move and -2 fight until it shakes off the effect. She will then take her movement up the table to be close to her strong allies. The wizard phase will turn over to the opponent. A thief, a thug, and a man-at-arms will use their activations to get up near the treasure and position themselves around the board. Budwug will then activate and attempt to cast Grenade on the far side of the wagon, where the knight and infantrymen are located. He needs a 12 to cast the spell, but a 4 is rolled, and the wizard will take a point of damage for just failing so hard. He will then use his movement to get up and behind the red thief. The apprentice phase will now begin with the purple thug carrying a chicken. He has enough movement to run up and pick up the nearby treasure, now only to get it off the board. The other thug will make his way to the corner of the ruined building to block off the approaching man-at-arms if push comes to shove, while the knight will walk forward closer to the center of the table. Alan will then activate and attempt to cast Strength on the gray thug. An 11 on the die to be successful, and a 19 is, well, more than enough to give the thug a nice boost. Alan will then just end things for his turn up by the knight and a number of his allies. The thug carrying a lantern near Oswald will go next. She will post up near, well, this post, and stay out of the monster's sight. The crossbowman will go next and fire a shot into the ranger. A +2 to another +2, and the ranger ends up taking 6 damage as the bolt pierces past his light armor. This will turn things over to Oswald, who will follow his leader by casting Grenade in front of the knight and infantryman once more. He needs a 14 for the spell and is successful. Against the knight, his armor is thick enough to block the shrapnel, but the infantryman did not expect the attack and takes a whopping 10 damage, which is enough to take down the fighter. First blood goes to the sigillist. After these actions, we turn over to Cailana's soldier phase. We have 2 activations for a couple thieves. One will take his turn, moving up to the central treasure and use his second activation to pick the token up. The other thief will use all of his movement to climb this post and balance on this crossbeam, making his way up to the treasure on the 3rd floor. After these moves, Budwug has a few activations as well. This yellow thief will make his way through the open door and see the nearby treasure, and then pick it up, right underneath the demonic monster. The red thief will then double move and get near the edge of the board, setting up for an awesome play next round, while the barbarian is having a hard time deciding to be barbaric or defensive. He will actually stay put because he wants the monstrous creature to move down and attack the nearby knight rather than himself, which is exactly what will happen as we start the creature phase. This demonic creature will first see if the Furious Quill spell is still a factor, and it definitely is. This will reduce the demon's movement, forcing it to double move to make it down to the knight, saving combat for the next battle round. This will then end turn number 2. Spells are being slung, fighters are taking damage. What will happen in battle round 3? Well, let's not wait any longer and roll some initiative. And it seems Budwug will take the first turn this time. Starting turn 3, Budwug is unfortunately the only fighter to activate for his Warband this wizard phase, but he will make the best of it. The wizard with his short stature will reposition himself and then attempt to cast the Bridge spell. The spell is successful on a 10, and it is cast. We will set up this neat looking spell on the battlefield. Also, if you want to learn how to make the Bridge spell appear on your table, check the pop-up in the corner now. Let's move on over to Cailana's wizard phase. Cailana herself will start things off, and she will attempt to give her knight another boost to his fighting capabilities. She will cast Enchant Armor, which is successful on an 8, and this knight is now all decked out and ready to start fighting this demonic being. This creature towers over this poor knight, but he is ready for combat. We have a +6 to the creature's +2 due to the Furious Quill spell, and with that roll the knight manages 5 damage into the beast, though he still has much health to spare. We turn over to Oswald in the apprentice phase. The crossbowman will go first and still has a clean shot at the ranger. A +2 to another +2, and this time the bolt slams into the ruined wall, whizzing by the ranger's head. Oswald will go next and feels very safe next to his allies, so he will stay put, though he will cast the grenade spell once again, targeting the creature, the ranger, and the knight. The spell is successful on a 14, and a 3 is rolled. Choosing not to empower the spell, Oswald takes a point of damage in the process. Maybe he isn't safe sitting next to his crossbowmen. The apprentice phase moves over to Alan and the 3 fighters who are nearby him. Right off the bat, the thieves with the treasures will start getting the hell out of Dodge. Their movement is limited, but they seem to be pretty free and clear at this point. Alan will go next and has a trick up his sleeve. He will attempt to cast the Mud spell over this large choke point and hopefully slow down Budwug's Warband. The spell is successful on a 14, and a 19 is rolled. And just like that, mud appears on the table. Well, mostly over an already muddy road, but we will ignore that fact. Alan will then scoot back and get back into range of the treasure holders. One more move, and it is the Green Knight who will move forward and then attack the Orange Thief. A +4 to a +1, and no damage is done to the fighters. Things will then turn on over to Budwug's soldier phase. We have numerous fighters to activate. We will start with the solo movements first. This bridge spell has come in handy as the man-at-arms and the thief are able to run up and get into the ruined home with ease. The red thief even has enough speed to get into combat range of Cailana's thief and hold the fighter off for the time being. Meanwhile, the thief carrying the treasure will start making his way off the table, while the model stuck in the mud and others nearby are going to attempt to move out of it and go for the last couple treasures not being carried on the table. The mud spell is really starting to become one of my favorites in Frostgrave, such a strong board manipulator. Now onto the single combat with the knight and the thief. Same fight rolls as last time, and even with that strong roll from the thief, the knight only takes 2 damage from the hidden dagger in his cloak. Cailana's soldier phase is next, and like her opponent, a number of models need to activate. We will begin with some thief-on-thief combat on this second floor. A pair of +1s going into each other, and go figure, they don't know how to fight. The ranger will go and use his first action to climb up the wall and get out of that damn crossbowman's eyesight, and then fire an arrow down into the barbarian. A +2 to a +4, and the raging man is too nimble for a simple arrow dodging out of the way. The final fighter to activate will be this thug, who will backtrack a bit and get in range of Alan so that he may activate sooner next round. This completes the soldier phase, but let's not forget this terrifying demon. We shall see if the Furious Quill spell is still messing with this guy, and it is still unable to knock off the effect. So commences an attack. Only a +2 to the knight's +6, and with a parry and a stab, the knight absolutely eviscerates the monster. Oswald, the crossbowman, and even the raging barbarian see this fighter's bloodlust, and much respect is sent his way. This will end Battle Round 3. That just goes to show you folks, boost the stats on your fighters and decrease the ones of your enemies, and combat, well, will be much easier. So let's roll some turn 4 initiative. And rightly so, Cailana goes first once again. Turn 4 wizard phase, and Cailana is wondering if it is even worth sticking around for the rest of the battle. She has the central treasure in her possession, and she is far from snagging the couple that are still sitting around. She will go on the defensive and cast the wall spell. It is successful on a 12, and a 17 will do. The ground rumbles and shakes, and stone erupts from the earth, blocking off a majority of Budwug's Warband. Following this strong play, the knight will move up and engage the barbarian. We have a +6 fight to a +4, and another natural 20? Oh, that is a total of 16 damage, and the barbarian is sliced in two. The blue and red knight stands above his defeated foe. As the strong and mighty fall in front of this ravenous fighter, the enemy cowers in fear. Budwug and his band of fighters see that Cailana and her warband are no simple band of spellcasters and fighters. They are a force not to be reckoned with. During the battle, only the infantryman fell, but he was able to recover from his wounds. Cailana also managed to boost up her max hit points, make the wall spell easier to cast, and take the time to learn the bridge spell from a grimoire she acquired last encounter. For the treasure, they managed to scour up 200 gold crowns, a potion, the elixir of speed, a scroll of telekinesis, and a grimoire of right scroll. With her coin, she decides to replace one of her thieves with the speedy and agile treasure hunter. Cailana and her warband make their way into the town of Castell. Who knows what dangers and magic they will find. There you have it, folks, another Frostgrave battle report in the books. That knight rolling nat 20 after nat 20, absolutely decimating anything that drew near, was quite the achievement. So congrats to you patrons, you get to give me a hand in coming up with a name for this soldier. If this is something you'd be interested in, or just want to give the channel a helping hand, I would be most appreciative for your support. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the channel out more than you know. I want to thank you all for watching, and of course, happy gaming.